Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Joanna Bucknell, and you're listening to episode 13 of Talking About Immersive Theatre, or TAIT for short. That's TAIT. In this series, I chat to all kinds of immersive folk about the work that they do. So, without further ado, I will let you get at it. I'm here at the Brighton Fringe Festival headquarters in Brighton Hove City College with Brighton Fringe Festival director Julian Caddy.
Hello.
So thank you so much for joining me, Julian. I know that you are really busy at this time in the run-up to the festival. So you have been the managing director at the Brighton Fringe Festival since October 2011, is that right?
That is correct.
Good.
Gosh.
Because I've done my research, but just do correct me if anything is not correct.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to that, you were involved in the founding of Sweet Venues. But can you tell me a little bit more about your background as an event producer, director, and what has kind of led you up to taking up your post with the Fringe?
So the journey is long, and winding, just as all of our journeys are long and winding. I was always interested in theatre, but never dared to do it at school because I wasn't popular. And so, it's a sad story.
My school didn't even do theatre.
No, and it was all the sort of popular kids that did theatre, and I thought, oh, I really wanted to do it, but I didn't quite get in with the right clique and so on. So I when I left school, I went to what was Bristol Polytechnic, University of the West of England, as it became while I was there. And I just joined the Drama Society. That was the one thing. I just went to the Ents, like the Poly Players it was called, and started doing it there. And then got really into it and just was doing performance after performance, production after production, and then got to the end, got into the official big university musical, and then
what was the musical?
It was Anything Goes.
Oh wow!
And I played Lord Evelyn Oakley, and it was great fun, really really great. And I thought, that's it, I'm going to go to drama school. And I got all the applications for all the drama schools in London. By post, because you will do all that all by post then.
Yeah, me too.
And I didn't dare apply.
Oh.
So my dad said, no, you go and do this, whatever. So I ended up doing a management trainee scheme in a marketing agency.
Wow. Okay.
And I worked in marketing for 3 years, but still did Amdram in the evenings.
Yeah.
And in the end, it all became too much, and I started doing an evening course with a school who had this crazy Russian Stanislavski trained theatre director who ran it.
Oh, that's incredible.
And ended up giving up my day job and going to drama school for 3 years. It ended up being 4 years. And then coming out as an actor in about 2000, 2001. And from 96, though, I did my first production in Edinburgh, acting and co-producing. I then, as part of the marketing company, I managed a comedy tour with Jongleurs, sponsored by Twiglets, so I was on the agency side working for Twiglets. Funnily enough, this is bizarre. It's just bizarre. I've not really talked about this before. So I was working for Twiglets and organised this 28-day comedy tour for this sponsorship thing, going around the country to these different doing these comedy gigs. And roughly around the same time I was doing this producing stuff in Edinburgh. We put one of the shows from the Twiglets comedy tour at the Assembly Rooms in Edinburgh. We did. I was also doing. I was at Hill Street Theatre in '96, and I got this bug about doing the Fringe. And when I went to the drama school. I said, why don't we set up a drama school company that we take shows to Edinburgh?
Yeah.
So I was the producer of those shows, so performing in things and producing doing all the organising. And then when I left, I, as one diversifies to do lots and lots of things. I co-founded a venue up in Edinburgh, which we called Sweet, set in a hotel on the Royal Mile. in hotel suites, and so it became suites, spelt like sugar rather than the suite of a hotel, and that was the beginning of that. And we produced 52 shows in the first year, in 3 spaces, and then it just grew to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shows.
Huge, phenomenal now.
Over the course of that time, my wife and I were producing children, and it became more and more untenable for me to be buggering off to Edinburgh for 8 weeks at a time.
Well, it's hugely consuming, isn't it? And it's kind of 24/7.
And you don't make any money.
No.
Really. No, folks.
Cultural.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and there was some great fun to be had with some, it's just it's an experience everybody has to have. And I was it was brought to my attention about Brighton Fringe being having some need of a director. I applied in 2010. I didn't get it. They appointed someone else.
Oh.
And then in 2011, I got an email saying, it didn't really work out with the last guy. Are you still interested? We really liked your CV.
Wow.
And so I came and joined in late October 2011.
And you live in London, don't you?
I live in London, but I've also got a flat in Brighton, so I kind of live here, really.
Yeah, that's perfect. Especially at the moment with the trains.
And all sorts of things, yeah.
We have the same trouble trying to get across. It's much easier to get the bus or drive at the moment than try to get here on the train.
Yes, indeed.
Well, that's interesting, because I've been coming to the festival since, like we were talking about earlier, since about 2006, when I started my PhD, and I first came as a research kind of activity, and it was such a different kind of beast then. It was in some ways kind of not as professional or as organised as it is now in kind of any way. And so I, as a researcher, had to really kind of scrabble to try to do all the research to try and figure out which shows might kind of fit my research brief and all of that sort of thing. So I've been coming for a really long time and seeing this kind of like massive arc of change, and I suspect that just in the time that you've been here as well, there's been a significant change. So what do you think, how do you think the festival has really changed kind of under your leadership and under your direction?
Well, I felt that Brighton Fringe was at a turning point when I started. It seemed that there were lots of very obvious things that needed to be done.
Yeah.
It didn't have its own box office. It was all through the Dome. And I thought that I arrived and I said to the box office manager, so where are all the ticket printers? And he said, we don't have any ticket printers. And I said, how do you sell any tickets? And they went, well, we sell them through the box office at Brighton Dome. How does that work? Well, not that well, because the Dome are not really interested in the Fringe. They've got their own festival to deal with.
Of course.
So I set up our own box office, which was not terribly well received by the Dome at the time. I was even called to a meeting to say, it's outrageous that you're doing this, it's a competition. It was, and so that, I suppose, was a turning point for the Fringe. And I also had some relationships with with David Bates, who ran the famous Spiegel tent in Edinburgh and worldwide, and there's a chap who worked with him, Adrian Bristow. We all came together and we decided we'd set up the Brighton Spiegel tent in 2013. I found a sponsor, and we linked them up with the local bar company, and it all came together in some virtuous, wonderful thing that just happened. And at the same time, well, no, it was a year before actually. The people who ran upstairs at 3 and 10 were setting up the Warren, and that was all part of the I guess the new movement of where Brighton Fringe started to go from, the setting up of the Warren in 2012 and the Spiegel tent in 2013, and I think it's led to a more, I think, a professionalisation of the way that venues are run.
Yes.
And I've very much pushed, as much as possible, quality.
I was going to say that I think there's been, since I was first coming, it's much easier now to kind of identify professional work over other kinds of work. And I think, of course, that community work is extremely important, and the amateur kind of work that participates as well is important. But I think earlier in the festival, it was much harder to kind of distinguish between that kind of work. And I think now it's much more cohesive, and it has a much more cohesive identity. And certainly as a researcher, and it is now much easier to kind of pick through what's on offer and really figure out what, because I think venues are now starting to really have characteristics too, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, I think that it's about making sure that there is a collective confidence between the performers, the venues and the audiences, that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like a microcosm of the world, a Fringe Festival. It does rely on people wanting to take part, wanting to feeling their confidence. The economy, economic statistics are always based on what people think is going to happen.
Yeah.
And if lots and lots of people think it's going to be dreadful, then there's a recession. And in the end, it's about being a cheerleader for Brighton Fringe and the opportunities that it could create, because I don't put the work on.
Yeah.
I won't necessarily know what the lion's share of the shows will be, but I'm able to create an environment, a framework around which people can succeed. So we set up our own awards. There had been a bit of a hodgepodge of awards previously in 2014 or 2015. 2015 we finally set up our Brighton Fringe Awards, where we brought them together under the Brighton Fringe banner, whereas previously it would have been the latest awards, the Fringe this, Fringe that award, and it was all just wasn't quite focused enough, and we, with no money really, managed to put this all together and give people a certificate and so on, and people can put that on their flyer, and we give them a free registration for the following year, so they come back, so you've got better quality work that keeps coming back. We've raised about £25,000 in bursaries for performers, which is really important, and we've been building up a lot of international relations. I'm the vice chair of the World Fringe Alliance, which sounds a bit like Spectre.
Yeah, it does.
Which comprises Adelaide Fringe, Perth Fringe, National Arts Festival of South Africa, Prague Fringe, Amsterdam Fringe, Edinburgh Fringe, Brighton Fringe, New York Fringe and Hollywood Fringe.
That's huge.
And I've been on the jury for the National Arts Festival of South Africa for the past 5 years, and also for Amsterdam Fringe as well. And I tour to. I was in Adelaide earlier this year. I was in Perth and Adelaide last year. I go to Avignon Fringe in July. We do an award in Edinburgh, and each year we're looking to build the number of quality pieces of work that come to Brighton, and essentially acting as that cheerleader. I go and do sessions with artists all over the world to promote Brighton Fringe. I was a consultant for the British Council in Lagos in Nigeria a couple of years ago to help them set up the Lagos Theatre Festival Fringe. And that people would have no real reason to think about Brighton Fringe unless you do go out there and you just make it as easy as possible for people to understand it.
Exactly.
And through the relationship with South Africa, we've for the last 2 years been able to bring over South African performers from who've won awards at the National Arts Festival, and I think there's probably a couple of dozen now that have come over directly as a result of that. This year we've got the Dutch season, which is 14 pieces of work, award-winning work from the Amsterdam Fringe over the past 5 or 6 years, and that's all non-verbal. I think there's maybe one piece that's spoken. Otherwise, everything else is.
Well, that's always a challenge, isn't it, with international work? Is finding work that speaks across those language and cultural kind of challenges. So
that's been great, and it's been funded by the Dutch government and the Dutch embassy and the equivalent of the Arts Council for the Netherlands. And that's been a really great thing to have on board. And interestingly enough, we get more money from the Dutch embassy than we do from the Arts Council in the UK, which is an indictment or
or
something that's quite revealing, I suppose.
Doesn't really surprise me, actually. And I noticed in the programme, and I'm looking through for very specific, again, sort of immersive and interactive things, there's quite a few Australian companies, I think, that are coming over, and I think that's really exciting and really interesting because, of course, we can't all afford to go off to Perth or to go off to the Netherlands to go to these festivals. So I think bringing over this work to do that kind of cultural exchange and that kind of cultural sharing is just so exciting. And it's so exciting that it's happening as part of the Brighton Fringe Festival rather than happening at the Barbican in London or at the National somewhere again, which kind of is a little bit less accessible, I think, than the Fringe Festival. So for me, as a maker and as an audience and as an academic, I think that excites me, that kind of sharing and bringing of different cultural works. So I will definitely be going along to see some of those bits as well.
Yeah, it's great, and the whole theatre scene or performance art scene, or I guess performance generally, because that could include dance, puppetry, mime,
absolutely,
what have you, is so different depending on the culture in which you find yourself. A fringe festival is such a really great platform for all of these different countries, performers to come to present work, and for it to be seen as the springboard, I suppose, for them to take work around the country and around Europe.
Well, I think as well it's because of a lot of the opportunities, especially when I'm looking as a maker here, tend to be very theatre based here in the UK, and my work comes from a much more kind of live art, performance art kind of base, which is much more European. And actually I find the Fringe festivals much more open to that kind of form of performance rather than just theatre. And so again, as a maker, that's something that really excites me, is that I get the opportunity to kind of showcase this kind of work. And it's not just some strange little thing that's happening in a corner. There's a whole host of other work that's going on that's coming from that similar kind of vein as well. And so for me, that's one of the other things that's exciting, is just the varied amount of things that nestle under that kind of broad term of performance, I think, and that is exciting, from family shows up to kind of high-end live art. And I think that's exciting, to be able to come and in one day see kind of like a body artist and then go and see a puppet show, which that for me is exciting.
Yeah, and it is the sheer range and the volume of shows that is quite exhausting to think about. But also it's cheap, or cheaper.
Yes,
than, say,
yes.
Like Brighton Festival perhaps, or the Barbican, or elsewhere. There's a significant amount of the shows which are cost £5 or free, and the average ticket price remains, I think, off the top of my head, around about £8.50.
I was going to say, it's £8.50, isn't it?
So it is an affordable experience,
yes.
And it means that you can have a bit of a performance orgy when you're just going,
exactly.
Let's see this. Where am I going next? Check the app, and whatever.
I've got much better at that. When I first started going to festivals as a researcher, I just program everything I wanted to see, and I'd make myself a little spreadsheet, and I'd be like, okay, I want to see these things. And the first time I did it in Edinburgh, I forgot to check where venues were, so I found myself madly just running halfway across Edinburgh all the time. So now I'm always really careful, so I choose what I want, then I go on Google Maps and go, okay, what can I feasibly get to between all of these different things? And actually Brighton is much easier to do that, because most things are very much within walking distance.
Yes, that's true.
Actually, in the city. And for me, it's perfect, because I'm just live a little bit further along the coast. So again, I know if I come for the day, because it has to be for the day, I can see loads of things because I can afford to do that. And it's a vibrant city, so I can go down the seafront if I want to, or I can hang out in the lanes. So I think it's just so different as well to Edinburgh in that respect. And of course, Edinburgh has its own buzz and it has its own very particularity, but I think Brighton has something else as well, I think, that's different to Edinburgh. I mean, what do you think? I
think it's a much more manageable size than Edinburgh. There are good and good sides and bad sides to it as well, just as Edinburgh. The good side is you have the range of the shows that you can get in Edinburgh. A lot of you even see a lot of the Edinburgh previews in Brighton before they go to Edinburgh.
Yes.
So you get the scoop
yes.
before it hits town, and you'll see these shows that are coming to Brighton to get the reviews that they can then use to take to Edinburgh.
Yes.
You see a lot of shows as well that are now starting to come to Brighton instead of Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Which is exciting from my perspective.
Indeed.
There is a marketplace that can happen outside Edinburgh, which is not so costly.
Well, we couldn't be further away, really, could we, on this coast?
Yeah. And it works well. It's a different time of year. There's a whole. I definitely think that more and more Brighton Fringe is going to step up to the plate in terms of being an alternative within the marketplace for Edinburgh, not as a competitor, but as offering a wider market.
Yeah.
Because people do both. We have arts industry professionals coming to Brighton Fringe a lot more than ever before. That's another thing that we're
so close, an hour away from London.
An hour away from London, and a lot of people will come and not actually be coming to stay in Brighton. They'll just come down. And I think that the downside of Brighton is the runs are too short. That really
is the big problem.
Me,
as
quite a lot. Is that there isn't yet the confidence, which it does come down to confidence, that a longer run will work. There is a general assumption, long runs don't work in, or this won't do so well because, and the more people say that, the more it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, exactly. And this year, because my company hasn't done Brighton before, so I've been loads of times as audience. It's just the first time we've put work on.
Yeah.
So we were like, do we just do? Because we knew we wanted to do 6 days. We're like, do we do a big 6-day run? And then we spoke to a couple of kind of friends who are creative producers, and they said, well, do something at the beginning and then something at the end. They're like, because then if people like it at the beginning and all the critics and stuff are around at the beginning of the festival, then they might review you and get people to come and see it then again at the end of the festival. But you're right, there is always that kind of, and I don't know where it comes from, this sort of caution when it comes to fringe events of not doing long runs.
Yeah, I think that there's a bit of a pile 'em high mentality in some of the venues about having lots and lots of shows. The Warren will do many productions, and the longest run that they tend to do, apart from say Shitface Shakespeare, maybe would be 4 or 5 max dates, and venues such as Comedia will rarely do more than one-offs.
I know. It makes it very difficult to see.
So I think that what happens as a result of having short runs is you don't quite get the build-up that you get in Edinburgh. It's not quite so exhausting.
Yeah.
As doing a run in Edinburgh, but then again at the same time, doing a run in Edinburgh gives you the it puts a show through its paces in no way that any other festival in the world could do.
And you have to fight so hard for visibility.
You're fighting for visibility. You're fighting for just bums on seats every single ticket
every day. Yeah.
You're out on the mile. You're handing out flyers. You're bleeding yourself dry. Financially. And there is this desperation as you stand next to another group of very tits and teeth university students, and a group of high school students,
100 of them,
and they're all on your own with your bloody one-man show in the pouring rain.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're just thinking, my life could not be worse than this right now. So it's it nothing can really prepare you for that. But Brighton Fringe increasingly is able to be some sort of middle ground between the very, very small festivals and Edinburgh itself. And there is lots of competition, but it isn't quite so difficult to get an audience for shows that aren't in the bigger venues. And Edinburgh, there is very much there is not a monopoly in any
but
shape
you
or
want to
form,
get into
but there is very much this big four psychosis, I think, that exists, where that people will say, if you're not in the big four, then you know what, it's not really.
You might as well not bother.
And having one venue, a venue that isn't in the big four, I've had, so many different stories from companies that had a terrible time at one of those venues, and
but
they ended up having a great time at Sweet and never stopped coming after that.
Exactly.
Because they had such a great personal experience, dealing with people who are performers, are makers, are people who actually have a vested interest in the success of the show. It's not so big. There is a personal
well, in those big four, it's touch. in, out, and it's just kind of madness.
Yes.
And even then, there's so much on in those venues that you're still having that kind of fight for the audience. And for me, as a maker, obviously those reviews are become really important. And if you've got it on outside of a festival, you want to do over 6 days because the critics won't come if you do a run of less than sort of 5-6 days. Of course they won't.
No.
But at a festival, there's this kind of really different attitude that it doesn't matter whether you do 1 or 6 dates because the critics will just be around because they'll be seeing loads and loads of different things at the festivals. So I think some of that might drive that attitude as well, is that we can do short runs at a festival because the critics are just around because they'll come and see loads of things, so it's okay if you even do a one-off, you might even get reviewed. But if you're in a venue that's not outside of a festival, we all know, well, you've got to do over 5 or 6 days, otherwise no one's going to make the effort to come down and review your work.
No, that's right.
But I think festivals, and maybe that does come out of Edinburgh, I think that kind of attitude that if it's in a festival, it doesn't matter if it's not a long run because people are around, you'll get reviewed one way or another.
Yeah.
So maybe it comes from that.
I think everyone's a little bit bonkers within the fringe community.
Yes.
In that you've got people who are passionate about what they're doing, and that includes these reviews sites. A lot of these
absolutely
these fringe reviews, Fringe Guru type thing. And they are passionate, largely speaking, individuals who care very much. They're not getting paid for it.
No,
and they will come and see something, even if it is a one-off.
Yeah.
And they'll write a good, detailed review, and it is very much a something that makes the fringe community so tight, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So me and my listeners are very much interested in immersive and kind of interactive performance, and actually there's loads on offer in the Fringe this year. And
you need to tell me about something.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I'll come to some of those later. Now, I've spoken to loads of different practitioners about this term immersive, and as a scholar, it's become something that kind of means nothing and seems to be attached to everything as well. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on what immersive, that sort of term, means to you and what it's meant to you in kind of your experiences, because it's such a huge term, but everybody wants to attach it to everything at the moment, it would seem.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of degrees of immersiveness, I would say.
Absolutely.
Because it's anything from just breaking down the fourth wall and asking the audience, what do we do next, audience?
Yeah.
Which can be a type of immersive theatre, all the way to, again, watching shows in Edinburgh. I remember a show that we were sitting in a World War I trench, and sort of immersed in the in the environment there, and you're so it can be that and anywhere in between, from walkabout to I'd include performance art as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
In it too, in that you're that there might not be necessarily a narrative necessarily.
No.
Very
often not.
Certainly not something which is terribly linear.
No.
And it's where you can also decide how you want to experience it, which side of the coin you want to look at it from, and it becomes I've had lots of really great experiences of this interactive or immersive theatre over the years, and I suppose it's the bottom line for me is what defines it, is it's exploring what theatre is and can be, or what performance or performance art is and can be. It's not. I think to try to pigeonhole it is it's pointless, really.
Well, it's like that term physical theatre as well, when people just say it's physical theatre. You're like, wow, that could mean 100 different types of robust European approaches. It could mean kind of approaches coming out of Italy that are historical. What do you mean by that? And I think immersive's become a little bit like that. It has so many possibilities and so many kind of potentials. But I think you're right. For me, it's the very thing that makes theatre important and special and different to everything else, is the liveness of people in one space together in that moment, audience and performers. And I think it's just pushing kind of right at the boundaries of what that could mean and the potentials of what it means to have people live in that space in that moment.
Yeah, and I feel that a lot of that there are some companies that I've seen do work in London particularly that I feel that they've lost their way, that they are immersive theatre companies. They've become, we are now an immersive theatre company.
Yes.
And this is what we do. We do immersive theatre. And
this
is the immersive theatre that we do. And it becomes what can we do now? Sort of difficult second album type thing.
Yes.
You come up with a great thing. Mask of the Red Death. Fucking hell. Amazing.
Yes.
But
now what do we do?
What happened? Now
yes,
what?
Well, now what?
Yeah.
That's exactly it, isn't it?
So, you, me, bum train. I still haven't actually
I've
managed
never
got to see it.
I can't get it. I've never got a ticket.
Yeah, I got so angry at the last
time.
time.
Yeah, me too. I logged in, 80,000 in the queue. I was like, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
I even contacted them and was like, hi, I'm a researcher. I've been trying. I really need to see your work. And it's just like, nothing.
No, and it's annoying as well. And I suppose that there is a
lots of celebrities managed to get tickets last minute, didn't they?
Exactly. And I was
like, I see that work.
You see some of these things, and I can't remember which company it was, down in Greenwich.
Heartbreak Hotel.
Heartbreak Hotel, yeah. Really, what was that? What was that?
I was all the way down there. It's a massive trek, all day waiting, and then I was like, I was befuddled as to...
And that to me was a really clear example of doing something big and ambitious that ultimately was just a bit meh.
I felt all I kept asking myself, because I always asked, what do I get out of getting out of my seat? There has to be value of me getting out as an audience member, to get up out of my seat and out of the dark. Yeah. And I felt that in that show I couldn't.
It was just little. It was so itty bitty.
So itty bitty. And initially, when it started, I was like, "Oh, this might be exciting. This idea of being processed." But then you go into the random room with the umbrellas and all the stuff hanging. I was like, "I don't see how this." But not even in a performance art way of. I don't have a through narrative. It was just like, I don't see how this relates to this at all in any way. And I came out of it very confused and very befuddled, and then trying to be sold burgers. So I was just like, what just happened to me?
Yeah, it was very strange. And
then they disappeared, because I've been trying to get hold of them, because I'd like to talk to them about their rationale and what it is that they were doing.
Yeah.
I can't figure out who actually produced that, who actually made that. And I've been searching the internet, and I can't figure it out. So it was a very odd little moment.
Yeah, and so I think that really that just as you create any kind of art, I think doing something just to be a bit quirky,
to be trendy,
is it doesn't really work. It's a there is an Emperor's New Clothes thing going on.
Yes, well, I get stung by this a lot as a researcher, because of course I try and go and see everything that claims to potentially be immersive. So I end up in some situations where I'm really confused, and I'm like, I don't understand why you would have labelled this as immersive, because it kind of isn't at all.
Yeah.
But when you do that, there are expectations from an audience member of what they're going to get out of that. But I think there has to be some value of getting out of the seat and getting.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't I just sit and watch this?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I do. I go along to events and I think, I haven't got any more out of walking around this space, but if I'd have sat and watched this, perhaps actually maybe I would have enjoyed it more.
Yeah.
But I think people are just trying to make something cool and trendy.
I think that they're doing the window dressing before actually deciding what it is they're putting in the window.
Yes.
And it's an empty shell. If you start the creative process deciding
on your form,
on the form around which you're going to create the content, it becomes something that's really frustrating. I've got a really good friend who's in rehearsals at the moment for a piece in the Netherlands. I cannot say who she is and what the production is, but she's performing in it, and she's saying that it's so itty bitty right now. It's a big, well-funded thing that's going to be performed for a long, it's got confirmed dates for a year coming up.
Wow!
And it's a big deal, but it's chaos because they've got this technical obsession of different elements. It's lots of different pieces, but no totality. And there's lots and lots of people. They've got a dramaturg, they've got the stage designer, they've got the lighting designer.
Wow!
Everybody all doing all the stuff.
Yeah.
And
that's
it's
huge.
all in this great big thing, and they've just got themselves lost in this journey.
That's so, it's so alien to me, because the way I work is it's me and my partner and another, and we are so small, but we do everything from taking everything out of the van, building sometimes the space to work in as well, and performing and writing the show and everything. So, but I think what that does give us, rather than being part of these kind of huge processes, is it gives us access to really understanding the organic nature of where that work has come from, why it's developed in the ways that it has, and that control of being able to then sort of deliver that to an audience. And when I make work, the first is an immersive. I hate the term immersive, really. It's funny, I do a whole podcast, I write books about it and journal articles, but the term immersive I find problematic. But for me, it's got, the first thing I think about is what story do I want to communicate? Well, not even necessarily a story, but a narrative, because my work usually doesn't actually have stories at all, it just has narratives. But I'm much more interested in what happens between those two people, maybe three people, in that space, in that moment, at that time. And so for me, that's the starting point, is that relationship. Why do I want that person in front of me in that moment to explore these things with me, and how can I make that happen then in a way that is valuable and gives people agency? And so it's driven by much more kind of sort of, I guess, integrity and ethics that come out of that. But I'm a performance artist, so I always come from that space of thinking about the real, nothing to do with pretense, but those real things happening in those real moments. And so when I do go to shows that I feel haven't got that integrity, that upsets me the most, more than anything. Even if something is well intentioned but not well delivered, that I can forgive, because I'm like, I know what you're trying to do here, and you either haven't had the budget to do it or the time to do it, and that is forgivable. But what's not forgivable is when it's, like you said, this empty.
Yeah, I also get quite angry about things like that.
Because then I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I'm like, you took advantage of me and you took my money, and I don't really feel I got anything out of that. And I don't want to sound like some commercial person that I've paid my money, I want my good value. But what I want is consideration.
And I have to say, there have been more than one occasion where what I've seen is something that's been funded by the Arts Council.
Yes.
And it's turned into something that is you just see the flagrant amount of money that's been spent on something, and you think, Jesus, really? Really?
It's so, I've endlessly spent time writing arts. I've never yet won Arts Council funding, but I spend endless amounts of time constructing Arts Council funding bids. And yet I go to work and I'm like, how can we not seem to manage to get hold of this money, but other projects do seem to get funded? And I don't know what logic they work off at the moment.
It's about the relationships with your relationship manager, and having a track record of having received funding in the past.
Indeed.
And just being really good at writing these applications.
Yes.
And it is a numbers game, and it is about who you know, ultimately. We've never managed to do very well with Arts Council funding in Brighton Fringe. And I never got a penny of funding in my life before coming to Brighton Fringe. And even now, there's only, I think, less than 3% of our income comes from Arts Council funding.
Yeah, that's very small.
It's a tough it's a tough game.
It is. Well, research is very much like that. So I'm very used to that game. I was trained to play that game. But it's exactly the same. Money goes where money's been because there's a kind of trust that money then will be looked after and will be spent kind of appropriately and in ways that can be evidenced. But I know how to kind of play that research game, and actually it's much more about the institution you're in. If the institution is used to getting money from the different research councils, then they'll keep getting money. If you're an institution that hasn't, you've got like a double battle.
And also it depends on where you are. I mean,
Yes.
the problem for Brighton Fringe is that there is a very well established, well funded festival in Brighton Festival.
Yes.
And whenever we go to the Arts Council, they go, oh, well, we give lots and lots of money to Brighton anyway. And the lion's share of that, say £1.2 million, goes to Brighton Dome and Brighton Festival. And there are several other big organisations.
Yes.
South East Dance and
Yes.
New Writing South.
Yeah.
That's not a big organisation actually, but there are other Fabrica and others that are well funded, and
Worthing is very well funded as well.
Well, Worthing as well, but it's not to say they don't work hard, nor saying that they don't deserve it. But it just means that you're unfortunate due to your geographical location.
Exactly. Same as if you're in London. If you're in London, the chances of getting Arts Council funding are fairly slim. But if you're somewhere more rural, you might have a better chance.
And you fulfil the target. it is about. There is something cynical, I think, about the Arts Council funding successful fundees, in that they'll look at what the Arts Council are wanting to fund,
yes,
and they will do something specifically that caters for that. So if it's going to be about doing work for disadvantaged people, they will they will create a project that does that in order to be able to get.
Well, there's a lot of that going on now. It's also, I'm an associate artist at the New Theatre Royal, and there is very much a sense of trying to make sure that all of the plans are future-proof in terms of meeting those kinds of agendas, because of course without that kind of funding it's just not sustainable for some of those smaller theatres. So they need to speak to that agenda, which means they have all of their mission statements and everything that are very much targeted towards that too. So if you aren't making work that fits within that agenda, then you can forget it.
Yeah. And it's a good thing, of course, because it means that there is more work that's being done specifically to fulfil the greater good of society, but it does take away somewhat the edginess of the work. Which brings me back to why I like the Fringe so much, is that you do have artists like you, hundreds of artists that come through each year, sometimes just doing a show just once, and it being a financial disaster, but somehow it turning into something else for later that takes you it sends them in a different direction.
I think the good thing about Brighton is it gives for us, we are taking a big risk with what we're trying to do. It's not a good financial model to see 2 audience members at one time.
No.
At all. But for us, actually it is important. Taking that risk is hugely important, and we couldn't do that in a commercial venue, but we can do it in the Fringe, and we can trial these things out, and we can really take risks and play in a way that we can't play outside of the festival, I think. Which is what enticed us this year. It's why we went, no, we're doing Brighton this year because we want to play, and we want to engage audiences in a way that involves risk, in a risk that I think more commercial venues aren't willing to take, especially with not bums on seats, 2 people at once.
I saw your box office. I saw the.
I know, it's cute.
It's just like a long list of dates with 2, and there were 2
Tickets hate us whenever they have to input it. They're like, oh, so you're seeing, and we've just done a show in London where we saw one person every 15 minutes for the whole evening. So of course each individual one, and it looks great because it always says sold out. It's like, yeah, but that was one. One ticket because we're seeing one person.
Yeah.
So that's it's they don't like it when we have to input those. So.
No. But it's good. It's good. It makes for good copy.
It's what I like doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I come from that background.
Yeah.
And so I was going to ask you, we talked about kind of that term immersive and how it's really difficult and has become in some way this kind of strange sort of trendy thing to do. But why do you think, the weird thing is audiences do not seem to be waning in their appetite for it, because very early on some of the critics were like, oh, this is done now, it's just going to be one of those kind of flash in the pan trendy things. But that's not the case. It's been kind of developing, I would say, for over 10 years, and audiences do not seem to be losing their appetite. More than anything, they kind of want more of it. Why do you think audiences are so desperate for immersion and interaction?
I think it is that there is certainly a section of society or of the population that that they're a bit done with Pros Arch performance and going to see the West End musicals or something like that. It's something about zeitgeist. It's something about something that is being one of the very few people who got in to see. Yeah,
like You Me Bum Bum Train.
You Me Bum Bum Train or whatever.
Everyone keeps saying it's fabulous, and I'm like...
Yeah, exactly. And I know lots of people who volunteered for it and tell me about, the inside about what's going on and so on.
But, that's very interesting.
But it's... there is very much that side of things. I know some of the performers who do the secret cinema stuff as well.
Yes.
And that's quite immersive, increasingly ambitious each time
yes,
as well.
Yes, I went to the 28 Days Later one of Secret Cinema. So I loved the first 40 minutes.
Right.
And then beyond that...
Then after that,
Then after that, I was quite bored.
Yeah, my kids got to see The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh,
One of the freebie preview.
Ooh,
preview
yeah, because it's quite expensive now to go. I think we paid like £70 each, something like that, which is a big day out.
It's a big
when
day
there's
out.
two
It's
of
an
you.
expensive thing, and I think that is also a thing that affects people's ability to go and see stuff that isn't part of a fringe festival.
I agree.
Because you'll be going to see things which are possibly in development, almost certainly in development still.
Well, that is a huge barrier, the money.
You're able to see something which is, that is obviously not making this company any money, but you're able to see it because it's, you're at the most exciting phase of a lot of these artists' careers. Yeah. I find it quite humbling to get to have the chance to go and see something for the first time. By a new maker or a new artist, who you really feel you've actually arrived at this point where they're at their most productive artistically,
and playing, and that's exciting for me.
And I think that the commoditisation of art and the internet generation and the mobile phone and so on, I think has led people to be more curious or more interested in doing something that's slightly off the beaten track. I think there's a certain hipster thing going on within performance as well, where people don't want to go to Costa or Starbucks. They'll go to the funny pop-up coffee shop that's...
although I do get fed up of eating things off bizarre objects that become challenging to eat food off.
That's right. That's right. That you shouldn't have to ever eat anything out of a sardine can. No. Really, it's just.
At least coffee still tends to come in some kind of receptacle you can put to your mouth and drink easily.
Yeah, jam jars for glasses and things. It's something.
Or chips in tiny trolleys, and it's little things like that. It looks fun and it's great, but actually the practicalities of trying to eat some of these things, like things that keep coming on really flat boards but have sauces and stuff, and you're like, how am I going to eat this food?
That's right. So there is a bit of that, I think, amongst people wanting to go and see something that's interesting, and it is capturing a certain zeitgeist each time that is the holy grail for performance. It's doing performance in an interesting original location.
Yes.
So it might not necessarily be immersive in the typical in the sense that it's kind of breaking the fourth wall necessarily. Yeah. You might there was a piece of theatre set in the Brighton Hove wood recycling and it was about a builder. And so it was set in a place which was a working workshop.
Yes.
And you're there in this working workshop with the smells and the atmosphere, just watching a piece of theatre.
And that is evocative, I think sometimes really powerful, especially smells. Smells are always the thing that stays with you, I think, and lingers with you.
Yeah. I mean, I did in 2000, I did I didn't even call it immersive theatre, and this is the very first time I've actually thought of it as a piece of immersive theatre. And it was called Fright Nights. Fright Nights. It was in Edinburgh Fringe, and it was in the latter days of my the drama school thing, where we met people up by the Mercat Cross on the Royal Mile.
Yeah.
And it was called the Tour of Terror.
I've heard about this, actually. I do a lot of reading about this sort of stuff.
So Fright Nights, the Tour of Terror, and this was something that I was the producer of, and I was in, and so on. And we would meet people up on the Royal Mile, and we there was a tour guide saying, "Oh, right, over here we've got this, and this is where someone was hanged, and this is all this kind of thing." And then they walk down the Royal Mile, and there are these monks following down, chanting Gregorian chants or whatever they were doing, just following in the distance, not in a busy street. And the thing started at just before midnight, and you arrived at Nidri Street South, which is where now the caves are. Just the Tonic, I think, is where they are now. And we were the first people to ever use these caves at the very, very end. They get to the end in this darkness. And the monks come behind the tour guide, and they murder him.
Oh my God.
And then they drag his bloodied corpse through this door, and then they leave everybody there on their own.
Did everyone just stand and watch? Did anyone try and intervene?
No one tried to intervene. No one did anything. And so they murder this man in this cul-de-sac, and then. I arrive. I was the guy, the host, and I had my hair sort of waxed back, and it was a very, very camp, black fingernails, white makeup, black lipstick, and all of that with top hat and tails and a cane, and I opened the door saying welcome, and then I took them round these interactive and sometimes just quite generic performance pieces in the arches down.
Oh yes, yeah.
And then there was a torture. There was the Gentleman's Club, which was a piece where a prostitute is tortured and murdered in front of the audience, and the people were fainting, and an eyeball gets plucked out and flung through the audience, and then I tell a horror story in a very tight space. Where people were fainting, and it was just a beautiful piece of, we were thinking, how many people are we going to get to faint? Yeah. But we just saw it as being something we wanted to do, and we all got together. We're thinking, let's do this, let's do that. We didn't really have a terminology for it.
No, of course not.
That was 17 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was just, we were just doing some theatre.
Well, when I started my PhD, which was in 2006. I really struggled to find this kind of work, actually. I had this idea after I'd done my master's that there must be work that engages the audience in a more interactive and kind of more participatory way. So I started hunting it out, and I really had to hunt it out. And actually Edinburgh and Brighton were some of the first places that I started to find this kind of work. And I was like, oh, people are making this kind of work. This is very exciting. But I certainly didn't call it immersive, and no one else was. But I get to the end of my PhD, and then the book comes out, called Immersive Theatre, and I'm like, no, I've just spent 4 years of my life calling this participative performance and trying to articulate kind of a name for this, but I don't think it's going anywhere. I think immersive is gonna stick with us for a little
I guess
while.
So.
Yeah.
I try to, when I'm not making much anymore, but you never think you're never going to make it again. So there's always
you always get dragged back in. It never leaves you behind.
There's always a candle burning for doing more work. And I'm now someone who's responsible for finding work and bringing it here, whether it be the Dutch season, which I basically, because I'm on the jury for these festivals, so I'm able to encourage them and meet them and say, look, come, and then we'll see what we can do to try and find money to.
Well, that's exciting because you enable art, which is amazing.
So when I'm working to create work, it starts from the premise of what story do I want to tell?
Yes.
How will the audience experience this? How are they going to take it? And how am I going to best give them the experience that they need to be able to understand and appreciate what I'm trying to tell?
Exactly.
Am I trying to alienate them? How am I going to do that?
Yes.
Am I trying to excite them? How am I going to do that?
Yes.
And it's looking at it from a director's perspective.
Yeah.
That detaches yourself from. You have to have lots of different perspectives when you're creating work, and it's not being formulaic, and it's not not even thinking about not being formulaic, because the moment you start to think about not being formulaic,
then you're in that same problem, aren't you?
Yeah.
Exactly. And for me, it has to begin with, like you said, the audience's experience. What do I want for them? What do I want them to experience? And how do I best achieve that?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'll always make interactive work. Probably not, because I'm interested in that. So the ways in which you can do that will evolve and change. And so for right now, the way I like to do that is to try to engage people in that sort of one-on-one. But I can't see it always being that way. And it's like you said, the audience have to, in some ways, kind of come first. Well, not necessarily the audience, but your communication with the audience has to come first, I think. And lots of people work in different ways, but it's interesting to hear that that's really similar for you.
Yeah.
So I was going to we've talked a little bit about Brighton Festival, and I know that you often actually get asked about the fact that they're on at the same time and that they're competing, but I've been looking at the programme for the last few years, and for this year very particularly, and actually there's very little in the Brighton Festival that is similar to what is in the Brighton Fringe Festival. So for me, of course, I'm always looking for immersive, interactive, anything which kind of engages in that way. And I literally maybe found 2 things in the Brighton Festival that might fall into that, and they're all downloadable audio things that you just do yourself. And so I didn't really see it as a competition, because I think the character of them is so different. So I was going to kind of ask you kind of what you think, because there's so many immersive things listed in the Brighton Fringe Festival, but not in the Brighton Festival. And I guess what I'm asking is, what do you think of the kind of different characters of both of those festivals, and how the city manages to support them kind of at the same time?
Well, I don't think Brighton Festival is competition to Brighton Fringe.
No, I agree.
I have evidence that I've received recently from an email from a member of the Brighton Festival team, where they directly say that Brighton Fringe is a direct competition to Brighton Festival, which I've not addressed just yet, and I will be taking issue with them on it.
Yeah, I find that odd.
But it's interesting to see that because it was an email I happened to see, and it was quite revealing, because I see the behaviour quite often as being quite obstructive, or making sure that things happen in the way that they want it to happen. They rule the roost, really. And Brighton Fringe is the errant sibling who's come up and gone, no, I've got sharp elbows, I want to do this.
I could do this.
But that's not me. That's not Julian Caddy. Julian Caddy creates an environment for the Fringe to happen, and Julian Caddy is here as a facilitator, as you've just said.
Indeed.
I don't create the work. People want to take part in Brighton Fringe, so they do. This year we will have over 1,000 pieces of work in Brighton Fringe this year, which is extraordinary.
That is extraordinary.
1,000 shows, 1,000 events. So there isn't a competition. I don't see Brighton Festival's competition in any way, shape or form. They do complement each other if Brighton Festival wants it to.
Yes, I agree.
I see no point in Brighton Festival unless it takes more advantage of Brighton Fringe.
Yes.
I see that Brighton Fringe is the proving ground, the crucible, the petri dish.
We have 1,000 companies who want to be part of that. So
it takes part, and that is where a lot of new work is happening. And I look through Brighton Festival programme, and I'm incredibly proud that Cat Francois, a performer that I put on in Edinburgh for the first time in 2005,
wow,
is in Brighton Festival.
Yeah, yeah.
That to me is the most rewarding thing of someone in my line of work. Each year, when I look in Brighton Festival brochure, I see year after year artists that I have produced,
Indeed,
I have programmed, that are now being paid to do their shit.
Which is the goal, isn't it? That's what everyone wants.
There's the Hiccup Project doing May We Go Round and May We Start Again, I think, who are Brighton-based performers who were award winners, bursary winners through Brighton Fringe, and they've now got their work in
that's
Brighton
incredible.
Festival.
That's such a proven...
And that, to my mind, is the point in Brighton Festival.
Absolutely.
I do not see it as a competition to Brighton Fringe. I see it as being something that can and should support Brighton Fringe. And the other way around.
Yes.
And as soon as that gets into their heads, I would be delighted.
Well, this is the thing, I'll come in the evening, I'm going to see several things on the Fringe, but at lunchtime I can go and see Tim Crouch's piece that's part of the Brighton Festival that's over in Shoreham.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't see that sort of distinction, if that makes sense. And I think audiences don't really see it that way either. Potentially they're like, right, I'm coming down to Brighton for 2 days a day,
no one
whatever.
Cares, and no one should care.
No, they're going to say, well, I want to see something.
I want to see stuff that's good. I don't give a monkeys about who's doing this and the infighting or whatever. They want to see something that's good. And this is not a universal thing that I'm talking about. There are plenty of people within Brighton Festival and Dome who've got the vision and so on. And
of course.
And Tim Crouch has done work in Brighton Fringe as well.
Exactly.
He did host, the Bathing Machine a couple of years ago.
Yes. Because I would go to see him, and whether he was
funded work, and that's marvellous. And I'm incredibly pleased that's there. I would like to see a day when, during Brighton Fringe, there is a team of scouts from Brighton Dome and Brighton Festival watching work.
Why are they not?
They are scouting. There needs to be a team of 10 people from Brighton Festival looking at Brighton Fringe.
There are 1,000 potential...
And that just doesn't happen.
That shocks me to hear that. Because there are, like you said, 1,000 potential future stars putting their work on in the Fringe Festival. How are they not taking advantage of seeing work when it's right at that point where it's exciting and challenging and on the cusp? Because there'll be lots of that.
I mean, I've asked I've on several occasions about it, and the answer that comes is always, but we're too busy.
Wow.
And it's a very revealing thing to say, that you're too busy to see the new work from these artists who could be providing your programme for the future.
And clearly
you can have highfalutin ambitions, and I think it's a great thing that Kate Tempest is saying certain things about, art should be open for everyone and so on. But bloody hell, goodness me, open to everyone. We are doing it's the tip of the iceberg in terms of the pay forward and so on. Is what is going on there. We already have most of the work for under a tenner.
Yes, exactly.
We already have 200 shows which are free.
Yeah.
We already are doing pieces of work which are bringing in minorities and disadvantaged people from different backgrounds, people with disabilities. We have bursaries for older people as well as young people, and we don't get any funding.
I know, it's crazy.
And the amount, and I can go on about it till the cows come home, and people get fed up with me, particularly within Brighton Festival, saying it, and where's the surprise there? But I'm not going to shut up.
No,
I'm never going to shut up.
Well, it gives you the chance to do that as well, because we're doing our show really cheaply over lunchtimes in a 20-minute version to enable people to come during their lunch hour, and it gives a chance to do something a bit more accessible, because we could not have afforded to do that outside of the festival context in that way, to say, right, we'll do a short version of it at lunchtime that's only like £5 or something to come to, so you can like still have time to eat your lunch and do 20 minutes of show. We could not have done that outside of the structure of the festival. And, you know, that's important. You've got to be accessible and realise that people have different kinds of commitments and different kind of audiences. And it's not always just about ticket price either being cheap. It is sometimes about time.
Yeah.
Lots of people, when they get home, need to pick up their kids from school at 3, then they need to get home and they've got other commitments, maybe caring commitments. Maybe at lunchtime at work, they have that time to kind of come out. And exactly. It's not always just about ticket price either. And you're right, this brochure is so full of free things and most things are under a tenner. There's loads of things under a £5. So that is accessible, and I think that's important.
And I think that really, sort of going back to what it is, I do think Brighton Festival is brilliant. It is a great institution that has come, that has changed, and it built this notion of a guest artistic director does bring in different things to it. But it bloody well should be brilliant.
Yes.
Because I look at it and I go, yep, good. And I'm pleased that I do, because it really should be.
Yes.
Of all the things going on in this city, that should be top class. It needs to be top draw. And so the quality needs to be great and needs to be interesting. And I'm very pleased when I see great stuff is taking place there. And especially when they're shows that companies that I helped give their break to.
That's so rewarding.
Yeah, Tangled Feet. I put on their very, very first show. They're a dance company, and they did for 2 years running the closing event for Brighton Festival with 50 grand productions. And the artistic director said to me, you gave me my break, and now I'm doing this, and it's such a great feeling.
And you know, in 5-10 years' time, there's going to be people who are in here who are going to be doing the same.
Exactly, and that's what makes it exciting to be able to do that. So, I think if there's one thing I'd like to see happen is that if Brighton Dome and Brighton Festival set aside some of their priorities towards Brighton Fringe, I think it would be great, because you see plenty of them up in Edinburgh. You see some of them going to Australia, but they never go to their own home turf to look for it. I have a closer relationship with the National Arts Festival of South Africa, the Amsterdam Fringe, the Adelaide Fringe, the Perth Fringe.
That's crazy.
Than I do with the festival in my own city, and that's sad. And but at the same time, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. And if I'm going to be transferring work to a national festival, to a funded festival, I'm sending work to National Arts Festival of South Africa.
Yes.
And so each year there are pieces of work going down there. Cape Town as well, Amsterdam Fringe. So the artistic directors of those festivals, they do come to Brighton.
Yes.
And they do look for work, and they do buy work,
which
and
is
they
exciting.
take it, and they pay people to take it.
Yes.
And so it is. Brighton Fringe is not going to stand still, and it's through that bloody mindedness that I learnt to have from the time that I wasn't at school. I was at school and I wasn't doing drama because I wasn't the popular boy in school. I don't care about being popular. I'm just thinking about what I think is important about getting shit done.
Yes.
And if I think, I want to do this, I'm just going to keep on going. I'm just going to keep on doing it until I actually end up doing it. So in a way, there is a parallel to my own life there, in that I didn't actually get to work in the arts professionally for another 12 years after the moment I left. I left school.
I bet that marketing background though has served you very well in terms of...
I suppose so, yeah. I mean, it's having some real world business knowledge and marketing knowledge and advertising side of things has given me a more of a resilience and an understanding of where of how the world works.
Yes.
I think, and it's professionalising the way that we communicate.
Yes.
is a vital part of how the arts work, and I think people get lost in creating their art and then forget about what they're going to do to sell it, and the thing that we do a big part of what we do is called Fringe Academy.
Yes,
where we have these workshops which are free. All of them are free.
They are.
50 free workshops, and we're doing things like how to create a business plan, how to fundraise. We have Arts Council officers coming to give presentations. We have workshops on health and safety, on how to flyer, on how to produce good print.
Which is perfect. I mean, they are really the skills that take a long time to accumulate, learning them kind of in the game.
Yeah, how to become a producer.
Yeah.
Events, where to tour next. Fringe festivals around the world.
Which is fabulous.
And having sessions where professionals can come and talk about how they got to where they are today, that sort of thing.
Which is really useful. So what are you looking most forward to this Brighton Fringe Festival? Have you got any kind of shows that you've sort of earmarked and gone, oh, absolutely?
Well, I declare an interest in the Brighton Fringe Dutch season.
Absolutely.
In that I've been totally into that for some years. I am very excited about the Dutch season because it's bringing some really interesting, really unusual pieces of work to Brighton for the first time. UK premieres, 14 UK premieres of Dutch work from the last 6 years. A lot of them are short, sort of 20-minute pieces.
Yeah.
And they are, some of them will be difficult to watch. There's one called Pan 7090 or Pavilion 7090 as they call themselves, where they play atonal music, and Holderbeat, a dramatic concert, is by the same company, where you are just in a piece of performance art. That's immersive.
This excites me. This kind of work is really my thing.
Yeah.
This is my bag. So
there's really Daddy Day is a beautiful piece of performance. That to my mind is a piece of immersive theatre. You're watching a slideshow of old slides with a father, and he comes. You arrive and he gives everyone a cup of tea, and he sits down. He doesn't speak, and he stands there and he's doing a slideshow.
Yeah.
This goes.
Oh, I love that.
And you're watching some quite strange holiday snaps. I'm not going to say what happens,
No.
But it takes you on a journey through watching these things with his smile and his.
Well, most performance art, and this is what's so interesting about the weird use of the term immersive, is actually, right back into the 1960s, when this kind of work started emerging, performance art and live art has always been interactive and participative, and you have always been fundamentally involved as an audience, because that's the very thing that defines performance art and live art. So for me, this is kind of where it all actually came out of in some respects, and is much less about creating these big fictive spaces, and it's much more again about that integrity of being in those spaces with those people who are engaging in often very autobiographical material too. So this kind of work.
Yeah, I'm
really
incredibly excited about having the Dutch season come. I've seen most of it already, but you have like Macho is a really interesting piece of performance which deconstructs masculinity with these two really hot guys who are beautiful specimens.
Just seeing their pictures,
their muscles or whatever.
Incredible.
And it takes you on a journey where you actually start to see them as being quite grotesque. And it's a piece of performance where there is no music, there's no sound, all you hear is them breathing.
I love that.
And it's very confronting. It's very uncomfortable to watch. And you start to ask yourself questions about humanity, about masculinity, about yourself. Yeah. What was I thinking? Why was I thinking it? How do I feel now? I feel a little bit dirty.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. And there are some really interesting. Yeah, it's just asking questions about things that you wouldn't normally do. This is a puppet piece with dance, where the puppet takes over the puppeteer, and gives life to the puppeteer, and it becomes quite dark. The puppet has a devil quality to it, and so but it's something that is suitable for maybe from maybe 11 plus age group, so kids can come and watch it as well. So
I find puppets very disconcerting as well. I find them really uncanny in a really uncomfortable way.
This one looks like Gollum.
God.
Yeah, I think that there's an awful lot within the Dutch season that I'm really excited about. Just the creativity from one culture is something that we should all just lap up. There's a piece of it's not interactive theatre.
No, it doesn't. It's whatever you're kind of looking forward to.
Immersive theatre was a Dangled, which is the winner of the National Arts Festival's Ovation Award, which is an adaptation of Gogol's Diary of a Madman. Which
yes, I was reading
again
about
a quite a disturbing piece of theatre, which is performed by quite a gifted actor, dancer, comedian. He won Strictly Come Dancing in South Africa, and he was on.
Ooh.
He presents South Africa's Got Talent and stuff like that.
Oh wow!
And so it's something.
That's incredible.
And he's sort of a big deal in
South
Africa. So he's coming here completely unknown, and so he's just the energy coming out of this guy is insanely good. In terms of immersive performance, or whatever you might describe as being immersive performance, I'm quite intrigued by HIP, which is Jolie Booth, Kriya Arts' piece. She was a squatter in, I don't know when it was, I can't quite remember, maybe 15 years or so ago, 15 years or so ago. She found the diaries of a woman who used to live in that house. Yes,
I was talking to Hester about this.
HIP's really interesting. It was at the Marlborough last year. It was in a piece of theatre, in a theatre. And there were objects that the audience would then pick, and then she would then tell the story through those objects. What she's doing this time is she's taking people on a tour around Brighton, to the places which that are part of this diary, part of this person's life. That they worked at Infinity Foods, or they did this or that in the North Lane, and this is where they met where they fell in love. This is the pub that she met her first boyfriend, and this is where this happened and that happened, and that I find a really interesting piece. And I'm looking forward to going to see that, just to see it as a follow up from it. I think that's the one piece of immersive theatre that stands out for me. I'm quite curious about what's going on at Shiny Town. It's an Australian company is producing some of the performance there. Yes. Which is the new venue in front of Brighton Pavilion.
There's an immersive version of Train Spotting as well.
Oh yes.
Which I'm kind of intrigued as to how that will work. If it will be really just promenade, or if it's going to have a really kind of meaningful kind of engagement for the audience.
I'm intrigued by it as well. I will go and see it. It did really, really well in Edinburgh.
Yes,
I know the producer because he's done Edinburgh a long time over the years, and my former business partner who runs Sweet Venues now is producing it in Brighton now.
Yes,
so that there is a vested interest there as well, partly. I was in Adelaide, and it was on at Adelaide Fringe, and
it's been very well reviewed.
It's been very well reviewed. I just don't sit next to the toilet.
Yes, that's what I heard.
The artistic director, or rather the director and CEO of the Sydney Fringe, did. And they left as soon as the shit hit them. They were covered. They got covered in feces.
They're the thing I'm most dubious about immersive things that are based in text, because I always get anxious that it's just going to end up being a spectator experience, but standing for many hours
Yeah.
in strange spaces,
Well,
which has its value.
You have this sort of thing with these sorts of theatre experiences. I remember one of my first pieces of, I suppose, immersive theatre, if you could call it that, was in Edinburgh in 1996 when I first did my first came for my first Edinburgh, and I was watching on my own. It was a piece called Mad, and it was what was the famous Grouse House, which is now C Venues in Adam House on Chambers Street.
Yeah.
And it was in a room. It wasn't really converted into a theatre, and we were watching people with mental health problems talking about their lives, and it was performed by people by those people.
Wow. Okay.
And we were witnessing a therapy group.
Wow.
We were sitting in a circle around this circle of people talking
huge
about
ethical implications.
Oh God!
Surely, I mean,
it was everything about this, and I was sat next to somebody who was drinking water out of a big 2-litre water bottle, and one point she just goes completely like and she just smashed the water bottle on the ground right next to me, and I just got completely soaked in
no! Oh
water.
no!
But that was I was immersed.
I tend to make sure if I'm going to something that is immersive or interactive, if I don't wear something I like a lot. I've learnt my lesson massively. Yeah. And when I make work that I know, I always say, when people get their little email when they've bought their tickets, I always say, please wear something you don't mind getting grubby. Just because some people don't think about it. Sometimes people come in like full on sort of evening clothes, and you're like, oh gosh, did you read what the show's about? Because you've got like big fur coat on, really lovely dress and heels, and I'm gonna splash it with stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that really.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
So I'm a good audience in that respect. I always come in kind of old sneakers and some jeans and a top. I don't mind if it gets God knows what on it.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
You never know.
Never
know. Exactly.
And of course, write-ups are always small and oblique, and so you're like, I literally have no idea what I'm stepping into right here. But that for me is part of the excitement.
Exactly. And I suppose when you're going into a Fringe Festival as an audience member, you need to go in with your eyes quite wide open.
Indeed.
Expecting the unexpected, and that's I suppose what makes a Fringe Festival important. Actually, I think as long as people are pushing boundaries, as long as people are taking risks and enjoying the creative process, then Fringe Festivals can only grow in terms of their relevance, because there isn't really anything else anymore.
No.
That's my worry about society, is that the Wild West of the arts isn't as accessible anymore, and the Edinburgh has become a victim of its own success in that regard.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
It's very, very expensive to do it. Brighton is not there. Will it become like that? I won't be able to control that, although what I want to do is to keep it at least rewarding quality and encouraging people to take risks as much as I can.
Absolutely.
If I'm able to support work, to tour, or to bring up arts professionals to come and reward experimental work, then I'll continue to do it. And I think that also Brighton audiences tend to be more curious and interested in unusual pieces than say your average Edinburgh audience, where I found myself being disappointed about the fact that I'm seeing a piece of amazing dance from Japan on a Saturday evening with only a third full audience, next to George Square or Bristow Square, where they've, broadly speaking, got comedy and cabaret going on.
Yes.
And they're packed in the bars.
Absolutely round,
And so the audiences that you're getting are not necessarily the curious audiences that are going to see the interesting work.
And the London audience actually is they're really looking for a good night out. So work that is hard to live through, work that's difficult and challenging and risk-taking is often not what they want to spend their Saturday night money on.
Which is a shame. Whereas, again, talking about the Dutch, I go and see work in Germany, in France, in Italy, in Spain. You see, in Russia, you see people are going to see work because they're interested in seeing work.
Yes.
France is a wonderful place for everyone having an opinion about art.
Absolutely.
And they will go and they will talk for hours about the work.
Yeah.
It's about everyone's a philosopher in France in some way, shape or form.
Yes.
There's something oui, je suis philosophe, oui, je vais parler avec vous dans ce cas-là, oui, c'est très bien. And it's there is this certain cultural connoisseurship that the French love. That you go to a building site in France and you will see them stop work at lunchtime and they will open a bottle of wine.
Indeed.
And they will have they will make themselves they will have a good lunch. They wouldn't dream of going down to McDonald's to do whatever. They set aside stuff and they have a quality and appreciation of things that in Britain maybe we never had it.
I think because it is cultural, because I grew up in, my dad was in the RAF and I lived in Germany for many, many years. And again, in Germany, they have this really strong cultural tradition. They have local theatres that show experimental work. Even like Pina Bausch's theatre was in a small...
Wuppertal or somewhere, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes. Wuppertal, this tiny little town. But they go to the theatre and they go from young as well. And I think everywhere seems to have this kind of a very different attitude towards kind of the theatre arts and the performing arts. And it's much more embedded.
Bayreuth or somewhere.
Yeah.
They go into... that's right. I completely, absolutely...
It would unlikely to happen. It would be very unlikely somebody like Pina Bausch would come out of Ely, for example. Just a small little town, city in the middle of like the East. I don't think that would happen here, or it would be very rare, whereas I don't think it is across Europe.
And I think also that, and this is a positive thing coming out of adversity, is that the best art, in my opinion, happens in times of difficulty.
Absolutely.
When we're all feeling comfortable about our lives, then things are a little bit more staid. And I think that in these times of economic, socio-political problems, it's hard. Life is bloody hard. And we ain't seen nothing yet.
That's my worry is actually I think we are currently actually receiving way more than we're going to in the next 10 years. I think the arts is going to see itself disappearing from schools, disappearing from college, and I think we're going to see our funding evaporating.
Yeah, and I think that's dreadful. But hopefully there will be a phoenix.
It will make us work hard.
Of people doing things dangerously.
Yeah.
People doing things, taking risk. And in the way that in Berlin in the early 90s, they had these performance art collectives.
Yes, yeah.
Tacheles in central Berlin. I lived in Berlin for the part of my third year of university.
Oh wow!
And they have these sort of collectives of artists making, but with no money, squatting and creating stuff and doing stuff that's really exciting.
Well, look at the Belarus Free Theatre. I mean, that is such a good example of people making incredibly beautiful and robust theatre in a climate where their lives are at risk in doing that. And I think they can take away our funding, they can take us out of schools, they can take us out of the public's kind of consciousness, but they won't stop us.
Yeah.
And I think the Fringe of all kinds, but especially the Brighton Fringe, is going to be an important part of, I think, of at least giving us platforms where we can still access audience and engage audience. And as long as someone is willing to watch, then we will have something to say.
Yeah, exactly.
And even if people aren't willing to watch us, we will have something to say and we will find ways of making people engage with us.
Yeah, I think that as long as we can conquer the collective apathy that pervades society, I think at the moment, when people can't actually be bothered to go and vote for something that is so life-changing as Brexit or something like that. You think, Jesus, what? Just what?
Yeah.
You know, what do you realise what's going to happen now? Do you really understand?
It's now slowly dawning, isn't it? I think.
I don't know. I think that, again, this collective apathy and self-denial is, you know, people are going to maybe just close their ears and eyes and see no evil, hear no evil.
Just like, it'll be fine, be fine, that kind of strange attitude. I mean, I always work off the attitude, my mum says, nothing worthwhile was ever easy.
Well.
And so I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So when things are hard, all I think to myself is, well, it's because it's going to be something worthwhile and something meaningful. And you never get anything good for free. You have to work for everything. So I think they take away our funding, take away our money.
That's right. They can't take away
They
our
can't
freedom.
take away our art. Exactly.
That's right, yeah.
And some of us make it because we have no option, because that's how we have to communicate, and that's how we have a need to do that. And I don't think all art comes from that place, but I think a lot of it does. And so as long as we need to do it, then we're going to do it.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm just happy that at the moment we have an exciting and a vibrant and a well-supported, well-structured Fringe Festival in Brighton where we can play.
I think we're very lucky as well.
Yeah, very fortunate.
Yeah.
Because we are free to play in that way where other countries and other artists in those countries are not at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think we should take full advantage of that. And I'm certainly going to this festival.
Very good.
As a maker and as an audience, I'm going to get along to see as much as I possibly can.
I'll get along to see the story of you and I. I've put a little star next to it on my list.
Oh, thank you. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. We've been talking for a ridiculously long time now, and I know that you are crazy busy, so I don't even know what time. Gosh, is that the time? So thank you so much for talking to me, and I will probably see you out and about while I'm at the festival, no doubt.
No doubt.
Well, thank you very much.
That's all right. Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed the episode. As ever, I would really love to hear from you. So you can tweet me at TAIT Podcast. You can email me directly talkingaboutimersivetheatre@gmail.com. You can PM me on Facebook. You can send me a direct message via YouTube as well. So there are loads of different ways to get in touch. And I love to hear from you guys. Any feedback is extremely welcome, even if it's just to let me know where you're listening and what you do while you're listening to us. So May is going to be really exciting. I've got loads of interviews lined up with all the different kinds of immersive practitioners and actors and performers and all the other kind of folk involved in the Brighton Fringe Festival, which is happening across the whole of May and into the early part of June. Now, I'm going to be releasing some of those as extrasodes throughout May and June, and then others I'll be releasing over the coming months. If you do not want to miss out on all of the additional content, then you need to make sure that you're subscribed, and you can do this on iTunes, SoundCloud, or on YouTube. The last piece of exciting information that I wanted to give to you was my own immersive performance company, which is Vertical Exchange Performance Collective, or VEX, VEX for short, have an intimate, interactive piece of work on during the festival. Now, this is called The Story of You and I, a trilogy. And you can find details about this on the Brighton Fringe Festival's website or on our own website, which is www.vexperformance.co.uk. Or you can either search for Vex or The Story of You and I on Facebook. We have Facebook pages for both of those things. So keep your ears pricked because you'll be hearing lots more from me this month. So until very shortly, bye.